Hello BookTube, this is part 44 of my 2022 library tour, Science Fiction and Fantasy 21. This is the grand finale. I'm finally finished. This is the last shelf. Let's get going. So the first three books are by Dennis Wheatley. He was a British thriller writer who wrote in a number of subgenres, spy thriller, occult thriller, mystery thriller, so on and so forth. The first book of his I have on the shelf is The White Witch of the South Seas, which I don't know much about. I had a desire to pick up some more of Wheatley's work besides what I already had, and there's not really a whole lot. He's not really in print anymore, and I don't think he's really going to have much of a following now in the decade since his death. So I have The White Witch of the South Seas. I also have a big omnibus of three of his occult thrillers. This is called Classic Black Magic from Dennis Wheatley. It includes the novels The Devil Rides Out, To the Devil a Daughter, and Gateway to Hell. And I picked this collection up largely for The Devil Rides Out. The Devil Rides Out, or in the United States, The Devil's Bride, was a late 60s Hammer horror film that is periodically shown on TCM, typically during Halloween, and I love that movie. It is really good, and it's much better than the book. So, The Devil Rides Out is about a group of friends. It's part of the de Richelieu series. It stars the French nobleman, the Duc de Richelieu, who's basically in his decades of life has done pretty much everything from soldiering to being a white magician. And in this novel, one of his younger friends, Simon Aaron, has come under the influence of a magician named Makata, and it's up to de Richelieu and his other friends, Rex Van Ryn, the American Blue Blood, and Robert Eaton, a publisher, to sort of rescue Simon Aaron from this cult that Simon's joined. To the Devil a Daughter is a separate work that I don't remember much about. I remember reading it, but I don't remember much about it. And I think it's also been adapted by Hammer in the 70s. And then Gateway to Hell, which is a distant sequel to The Devil Rides Out, in which the roles are reversed. Rex is now in the cult, and Simon's one of the ones who has to rescue him and gets a girlfriend or eventual wife out of the deal. So I picked this up from, I want to say I bought it from Hastings before they closed, but I don't remember for sure. Because I've had it for a while. Oh, no, it's half-price books. I guess I must have bought it from a Libris then. Well, anyway. And then I also have Uncharted Seas, again by Dennis Wheatley. I think this was adapted as Mysterious Island, something. I don't exactly remember. But it's about a group of like a ship that's leaving Africa for the Caribbean or South America, and they get sort of swamped in a sort of version of the Sargasso Sea, where they encounter monsters and people who've been lost for centuries, or their descendants. It too was made into a Hammer film in the, I think it was middle 60s. But I haven't gotten around to this novel yet, and it's been forever since I've seen the film. I also have The Once and Future King by T.H. White, which I haven't gotten around to yet. I think I picked this up from the Friends at the Library book sale, Nook. But I've been wanting to read it for a while because I occasionally have a hankering for King Arthur. The next batch of books are by Tad Williams, and it's a veritable tower of Tad Williams. First is Shadow March, which is the first book in a series. I think I picked this up from the Friends of the Library book sale Nook, although it could also have been Golden's, because I did have a desire to pick up some Tad Williams a few years ago. I also have his standalone epic contemporary Portal Quest fantasy, The War of the Flowers, which again I think I picked up from the Friends of the Library book sale Nook. I'm pretty sure that's where I picked this one up from. And then I have the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series. The first book is The Dragonbone Chair. And all of these I picked up from Golden's. The second book is Stone of Farewell. The third book, Part 1, To Green Angel Tower. And To Green Angel Tower Part 2. Again, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series. It was a relatively influential fantasy that came out in the late 80s and early 90s. It was one of the influences for George R. R. Martin to write A Song of Ice and Fire, I think. And then the last three by Ted Williams I have are volumes 2 to 4 of the Otherland series. I don't have volume 1. And again, much like with a lot of the books on this side of the tour, I had a go at the first book in this series and I didn't particularly like it, so I don't know why I picked up or still have these three novels. But I do have River of Blue Fire, Mountain of Black Glass, and Sea of Silver Light. Moving on, I have two novellas by Kaya Shante Wilson. First up is The Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps. This came out in 2017, I think. Maybe sooner, or earlier than that. It's about a caravan who are moving through a haunted forest. The main character is called the Sorcerer. He's a demigod with certain magical abilities in addition to physical enhancements. He's in love with the captain of the caravan, who is himself also a demigod. He has I think, something special about his voice, and again, he has certain enhancements. And as the caravan travels down the safe path through this haunted forest, they are routinely attacked by a monster in the form of a leopard. And I quite enjoyed this book. It's pretty good. I'm not as fond of the follow-up, A Taste of Honey. This is sort of it's set in an earlier period in the same world. It's about a young man who kind of has a split in his destiny. That before the split, he kind of falls in love with a princess of his city-state, as well as a traveling soldier from an empire that's kind of sort of like Rome. So in one timeline, he marries the princess, has a kind of fulfilling life as the master of the hunt for his father-in-law and his family, and they have some children. In the other timeline, he goes with the Roman soldier, and they have Happy Life as well, and it's sort of which one's the dream and which one's the reality. And I didn't particularly care for this one that much. Next is another book I didn't particularly care for, and that is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is the first book in the Burning series. It's about a colony of refugees who kind of colonize this one area, and they have dragons as sort of magically controlled servants or weapons of war, and they sort of carve a kingdom out of this peninsula, although they are constantly at war with the indigenous peoples. And the main character is the son of the master of arms for a local noble. He's training to be a warrior himself when chaos ensues, and he eventually goes on a revenge quest for those who hurt his family. I really didn't care for the writing or the characters. I bailed relatively quickly in my reading of this, and that was in, I want to say sometime in 2019, or maybe early 2020, but I want to say it was before I was making YouTube booktube videos. The next batch of books are by Gene Wolfe. This is Citadel of the Autarch, it's volume 4 of the Book of the New Sun, and I picked this up from the Friends of the Library of Books on Nook, I'm pretty sure. Next is In Green's Jungles. This is the second volume of the Book of the Short Sun, which I think is a sequel series that's set on a some kind of giant space station, I think. I could be wrong. I haven't looked into these, and I picked these up from the Friends of the Library Book Sale. And this is On Blues Waters, which is the first book in the Book of the Short Sun. But for some reason, I didn't do these right. Next is The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. I don't know much about this. It was one of those books that I think I saw on Thomas of SFF 180's channel and thought it sounded interesting, but I hadn't gotten to it since I picked it up, which is, again, I need to get to. The next 3 books are by, at this point in their career, they were going by J.Y. Yang. The writer is now, I think, taken on the name Neon Yang. So these are kind of relatively early books in the Tensorate series. First is The Black Tides of Heaven, which is about the two youngest children of basically the emperors of this world, who are forced to spend their early years in a monastery to fulfill a debt that their mother has to the monks, and they kind of develop their abilities. One of them, Mokoya, has a prophetic gift, while Keha is a Keha. And then eventually they go back home, where their fates separate. Mokoya becomes a girl, marries a young man who will eventually assume control of the monastery where she grew up at, while her brother, while Keha becomes a boy and eventually leads a rebellion against his mother. And I didn't really like this. The writing's not terribly good. It's fractured, I think, is the best way to describe this one. The Red Threads of Fortune was released at the same time, and is a tighter book. But I didn't like it either. And I don't think I ever got to The Descent of Monsters. which I don't know quite why I picked this up, because I'd already known I didn't particularly care for the first two books, but it's a habit of mine. It's a habit of mine. Next is Lost Gods by Michael Yongo. This is an epic fantasy. I think it's a duology. It's about a young man who is part of a sect dedicated to protecting their home kingdom by any means necessary, primarily by assassination. And he and his friends are on the verge of graduating, so they're giving their first assassination assignment. Things are botched for our hero, and he is then sent to basically figure out what's going on, who betrayed him, and who's threatening the kingdom. And there are a few other characters who have their own adventures that were part of his group. And I quite like this novel. It was pretty good. I'm not as fond of Pale Kings, which is a sequel. I think in part because this novel is a tad repetitious. It kind of continues on the same theme. And basically, it's like, well, events are different. The general plot's the same as The Lost Gods. And it could also have suffered from the fact that I think I started it in early 2020, which is, when my whole problem with fiction, or perhaps I should more properly say, my problem with science fiction and fantasy started. The next two books are by Charles Yu. First up is Third Class Superhero. This is a collection of short stories that, for the most part, I didn't particularly care for. I think there's one or two stories in here that I quite liked, but for the most part, meh. And I also have Interior Chinatown, which won the National Book Award about a year or so ago. And it's basically the story of a Asian American actor who is basically not only an actor, but also in acting, he's also living out his life. It's a rather complicated book that I had a go at last year and didn't particularly get on with, but I do want to have another go at it sometime this year. And the last three books are by Roger Zelazny. First up is The Great Book of Ember. This is a bind-up of all of the Ember books, which was Zelazny's long-running epic series that includes Nine Princes in Ember, The Guns of Avalon, Son of the Unicorn, The Hand of Oberon, The Courts of Chaos, The Trumps of Doom, Blood of Amber, Son of Chaos, Night of Shadows, and Prince of Chaos. And I've had this for years. I think it's been going on 8 years now, I think. Or maybe less than that, maybe closer to 6. And I'm not entirely sure why I picked this up, because I did try Princes in Amber years ago, and I didn't really get on with it, so I don't know why. But I do these things. I also have Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny, which is one of his science fiction novels that sort of envisions mythology, in this case Hinduism. I think he has another one that does it with Egyptian mythology. And I also have a Changeling, which is, I think, a kind of sort of Arthurian type fantasy. Although, maybe with some science fantasy. That kind of looks like He-Man right there. Anyway. So yeah. So, that was my 2022 library tour. I'm exhausted. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get this loaded up, and I will be back later this evening with weekly reads. And then on Monday, probably Monday evening, before I watch Monday Night Draw with David Finch and Meredith Finch, I will probably post a sort of a wrap-up reaction thoughts about my 2022 library tour. So yeah, but I will see you later this evening. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.